Alright. War on Gaming here, back with another one. So, this time it's going to be an Enigma walkthrough. This is going to be the Topaz Enigma domain solo. So, pretty much, we're just running it straight through, is what it is. One take, no questions whatsoever, and we're going to try to get through all 9 bosses. So, I'm using my Lady Valda Sui. So the thing is that the way that I have her set up, I'm going to be using the ice build, so an ice potential build. So Hone Darkness would be the name of the potential build, right? And the Hone Darkness build followed with, of course, an ice setup, ice jade setup. So we're talking stuff like successive ice blast, sub-zero seal, ice break. I have on there the Crescent Slam ice wielding, and then I believe long handle weapon sap. Yeah, long handle weapon sap, and then I think that's about it. There's one more that I'm probably forgetting, but that's pretty much the setup. And so pretty much what we're going to do here, of course, at the start, what you're trying to do is get rid of as many of the enemies as quickly as possible, right? That's your thing, but let's walk through how to play an Enigma domain solo properly. So your aim is going to be to wipe out the enemies without opening the chests initially. You want to get as many sections done as possible, aim for cluster areas, and of course you're going to want to do the stuff like what I'm doing there, which is air walking at certain times to shorten the amount of time it takes for you to get to each area. Valda has to be played very specifically. You can cancel in and out of her attacks at will if you know what you're doing, especially the one with her astral aegis. Her spear move, that one, you cannot easily cancel out of after the first hit. If you start doing this part, the gold spin, you cannot cancel out of the gold spin easily. So you need to know that before kind of going into it. But so as you can see with those counters, we're of course using that long handle weapon sap. Every time we deal a certain amount of damage, it of course causes the ice blast. So that's really important. Successive ice blast is increasing the damage of that because it allows the ice to hit multiple times. And so as you can see, it allows us to just shred through enemies, right? I'm pretty much ignoring almost all of the omens that are present in this one. And the reason is because the omens in Enigma, at least from what I've seen, are nowhere near as dangerous or as effective or detrimental, I guess I should say, because omens are negative, right? So they're nowhere near as detrimental as the ones that you find in Yama's Abyss. So of course, as you can see there, I use diffuse to sit there and avoid that enemy's attack. So that's another important piece, right, is to master your diffuses. They'll help you a lot in terms of taking out bases. So again, if you notice, I have managed to take out all of the enemies, but I have not touched or opened the chests yet. There will be time for that, and you should open the chests for far away areas, but you should never go past a certain percentage. Your enhancement progress should never go past, I would say, 85 to 90% before engaging whatever boss you need to take out. So here we're just using a combination of attacks in there, and I'm trying to iframe dodge when necessary, as you saw. I could have diffused, but sometimes diffuse doesn't work for me when a dodge could have just worked. So I'll just use the dodge instead. You have to figure out, as you continue to master whatever character you're going to use, how to actually best use that to your advantage. That was a situation where the bubble should have hit the fiery monster, but they just didn't. Of course, here we're parrying his attacks. All of the attack sequences that I'm showing here are ones that he will always use or normally use. So if you know how to react to each one based on what I'm showing, you should be good to go. So again, we're dealing so much damage that we just cut through him with no problem. So let's move on to the next one. We're going to go ahead, and because we have not managed to start another boss fight yet, I decided to go ahead and move over here. I could have airwalked and made it faster, but I know that I'm not too pressed for time right now, so I'm not really stressing too much. We just have to go in here and kill the remaining enemies. And when you're doing this kind of thing, especially in the early sections, do not kill the enemies and then immediately run to get to the boss just because he landed. Just keep wiping out enemies. Try to make sure that you have as many areas clear, and you can raise that enhancement progress meter as close as possible to 100 without going over. so that way when you actually take on the boss, you should be good to go in terms of your next steps, right? You'll be able to take out that boss and hopefully cause more bosses to spawn. Okay, so from here we're gonna go ahead, and now that the fiery monster has spawned, now we're gonna go back and actually engage this boss as well. So the aim here, I guess I can talk about the mechanics a bit for the boss too. You can visually see what I'm doing, but basically the fiery monster has a few different attacks. The first one is whenever its hands move, it starts casting, specifically its hands, not the staff being up in the air, but the hands. It starts casting circles that trap the opponent. The next attack that it did was to launch the focus orbs, which have these black orbs that come out that you can parry. The third attack was the one where it raised its staff around, swirled it, and then released a dark aura which can do damage to you. And then it tried to do the trap recently, and then this is another one that it does where it launches the orbs from the staff. So you can dodge or defuse those, kind of like how I did there, to pretty much get around them and deal with those accordingly. Whenever you're trying to deal damage with elements, whether that be ice or thunder, you're going to want to go for your maximized or your maximum damage attacks. So for most characters, those are going to be related to like your vertical attacks, your charge attacks, but generally it's going to be like charge vertical or charge horizontal depending on the character. Now in a case like this one is pretty much I'm using a combination of attacks to get into the gaps of this enemy. Now it's interesting, he can get stuck on terrain like that, which kind of makes no sense, but that's also why I'll sit here and kind of guide enemies over based on their attack pattern. The ominous Hell Scourge tends to attack in pretty much threes, though he can sometimes come up with a 4-hit attack sequence. I'm sure there are people out there who would disagree. Someone I can think of right now would probably say I'm wrong on that, but he does have a 4-hit, and it just depends on whether or not he goes into that specific sequence. It's technically a 3, but he'll stagger, and therefore it turns into a 4. Okay, for this one right here, this is Matron of Yushan. She is probably the most annoying boss that you could possibly fight, both her first form and her second form in Enigma. So for the first form here, you're really looking to stop most of her her focus attacks. Those are the ones you should aim for. When she's doing her normal sequences, these are again still the focus attacks. But when she is doing her normal sequences, she does a 4-hit strike combo normally of whatever sort. Then there's that one right there, which is the dash attack. The dash attack, unfortunately, is some BS to deal with, and that is because of the fact that the dash attack, you never know when or how she's really going to hit you with it. In that you can defuse it and think you've got the timing right, still get caught. You can try and dodge out of it, still get caught. So it doesn't really matter. You just kind of have to be ready to deal with it, and hopefully if you do get hit, it doesn't kill you. If you're using ice wielding stuff, then you won't get frozen as easily, and that's also another big point of dealing with her. Because if you use thunder or something along those lines, even the slightest hit from her will probably freeze you, and if she can get more than 2 combos in when you're frozen, you're probably dead. So we need to go ahead and get to the point where we can unlock the next boss. However, we're going to be careful, because what we do not want to do is create a situation where we spawn the next boss before we have, well, I should say we want to spawn the next boss, but we don't want to spawn the boss after the next one. That may not make a ton of sense right now, but it will later, or if you're familiar with the Enigma setup in the first place. You never want to spawn 2 bosses at once, because that means that you'll have a boss in another location that you now have to try and run to or zoom to try and play catch up with the game. So you don't want to create that type of scenario. So we're only trying to get the next one to spawn right now. However, right, there's this big gap in enhancement progress. So that means that if we were to go and kill this boss that we've just caused to spawn right now, we would put ourselves at a disadvantage, because that would mean that we would then have to run from there to then go and kill another set of enemies to bring about the next boss. So we're going to try and kill as many enemies right now as possible without driving past 100% enhancement. Side note, the little guy who I was just dealing with there, who I tried to parry but couldn't get the parry on, they're extremely annoying, because basically right when they go for the dash, if you don't have enough space before they go for the grab, every time you parry, you'll somehow miss. So that's going to be something you just need to keep in mind. So we're gonna go ahead and get rid of these guys. Again, I'm just using the Crescent Slam ice wielding ability to be able to knock them out pretty much instantly. I'm using the musket here, of course, to be able to catch any of them that are flying. My musket shots are still not the most accurate sometimes. I'm working on it. I tend to be more accurate in Yama's Abyss than Enigma for whatever reason. So again, here we're using that long-handled weapon sap, and I kind of use positioning. It's difficult to kind of explain really, but I use positioning to try to make sure that I don't normally get hit by the big guys. You just have to really think about where you are, location, if you can go around the corner, make the enemy hit somewhere that they won't be able to tag you easily. All those things are important. So we're still not opening any chests right now, and again that's basically because we're trying to make sure that we don't go past the enhancement percentage. As you can see there, I actually broke off. I decided to break off of my kind of like the enemy wipeout situation where I'm going and killing the enemies, because now we're at 91% enhancement. So there's no point, because if I try and kill 1 or 2 more enemies, 9 times out of 10 I'm going to push it past the enhancement progress point to 100, which will spawn another boss in another location, and now I have to do triple work trying to chase down each boss. So we're gonna go ahead. We grabbed our little kind of, be honest, our liquid purge right there in a sense, because that's an attack increase. The gold item that I just picked up was an attack increase. You should always grab the one from each boss that you killed before engaging whatever boss you're gonna fight at that moment. So here again we're just demonstrating the different mechanics. This, for example, is a parry chain, right? So you have to pay attention to what the boss is doing. Every time you see them get ready to throw blue, you would then dash back and parry. I would generally suggest a dodge parry. You can also do crouch parry, but it just depends. What I would never do though is just normal quick parry. It won't be fast enough sometimes, so something to keep in mind. So with these, you just parry the waves back. The 4th wave that you saw there, the last one, normally does not hit if you've parried the first 3, but you just should be careful just in case. And then here, of course, we're getting used to her attack pattern, so we diffuse the stabs in each instance. That diffuse really should have counted, but we won't even get into that. The diffuse window without potential enhancements is just exceedingly tiny, so you can't really rely on it. And this is that dash attack that I mentioned earlier that is total BS that the Matron of Yushin has. So as long as you're dealing with that dash attack, I would say you just try and dodge right before it hits or diffuse, but just be prepared for the fact that she may just mess you over. And that's just going to be a problem that you have to deal with due to ping concerns and everything else. You might just get switched over on that. Now this is her second form. I guess you could say this is grown Lady Yushan, and so she is a totally different problem. You'll have different issues where, like for that first attack, you gotta parry both versions, like that, and then sometimes you won't get the second parry, even though you should get the second parry. That's one of the very annoying things about dealing with her. Best thing to do is, if for anyone who's already used to the gameplay, they already understand, you're going to be trying to use your Astral Aegis to whittle her down as fast as possible, the Astral Aegis breakers that you have. Then after that, if you notice, I switched to just using Crescent Slam, because at that point you're trying to deal damage only. Now, the reason why I did this specific move here, it's not just to bring out the ult, because the ult is a protective mechanism that prevents me from taking damage and while dealing damage to the boss, at least hopefully. But the other reason that I pulled out the ult was because I pulled it out in front of her. Like, I used the base of the ult to block the boss's movement so that she has to get stuck dealing with most of the strikes that I can throw. So it's just timings for different things and reasons why you would use different move sets. So as you can see, you can parry certain blues from an enemy even if they're not focused directly at you, just by being at their feet. That's something else that's important to remember. So this one is the Omnious Hellscorch. I should have actually gotten that diffuse, or at least as far as I'm concerned, I'm pretty sure I should have gotten it, just like this one over here. But diffuse without the potential enhancements, again, is a lot more difficult to pull off consistently. So here we're just making sure that we use our long handle weapon sap to our advantage. No Valda build is worthwhile without long handle weapon sap. I'll repeat that a second time. No Valda build is worthwhile without long handle weapon sap. If you cannot put it, or if you don't want to attach it to your character, just don't even play Valda. I'm just gonna keep it real. Just don't even play Valda, because her parry counter is useless. It is the most useless thing in the game. They're wrong for creating her parry counter like that, because her spear does basically 0 damage, and your follow-up will get you killed every time due to kind of the fact that you're stuck in the combo. Nobody else's thing suffers from that. So with that being said, you always need to use long handle weapon sap to turn it into a 1-hit counter instead of a 5-6 hit counter combo thing. Weird. So here we're going to use another parry chain on Omnius, and see, we got Chi kind of on diffuse there. I will admit I probably diffused that one a little bit too early, but see, that's exactly why I switched now to dodging, because you can dodge most of those attacks, whether it's via normal tap dodge or whether we're talking about a hold dodge as well, depending on the situation. You just have to figure out which one is better. This is the only time it is safe to actually use the full move, where you use the 1.5 spear charge. That's what that stab was, a 1.5 spear charge with the rotational spear swing after. Then after that, we've transitioned here into the ult, because why? The ult does direct damage to health, and you're doing enough damage to where you can easily probably get 2 activations of your elemental attacks. And the reason why Ice is, of course, preferred as far as I'm concerned to Thunder, and probably people will disagree with me, but I feel Ice is more powerful than Divine Thunder on pretty much all fronts, is because you can always use it. You can literally be using any ult technique whatsoever, and as long as you're dealing damage, you can activate Ice. With Thunder, you have to be able to be in a state where you can actually parry that attack. You have to parry the lightning at the opponent. So if you're not able to parry Divine Thunder, it's a useless build. So with that being said, for someone like Valda, it isn't useful at all. So here we go again. You know, this is Omnius Hellscourge for the second time in a sense. And as we can see, we're just trying to sit there and utilize it in different ways. You saw that diffuse actually probably should have counted, but we just didn't get it. But there we see different diffuses. I diffused this one because of the fact that I did not know he was actually going to go for the focus attack. It's like a part of me said, hey, he might, and I saw the blue happening, but then I think also I spazzed, to be honest, and so I just went, okay, I'm just going to diffuse it just to be safe. So we're waiting, we parry this, if we parry this, and again, you keep seeing that Spring's Call thing show up. That's because that was actually the Jade that I forgot to mention before. I have Spring's Call on here, so every time Ice Break allows my Frostbite to go to 0, I can use the activation from Spring's Call to increase my attack for a short period of time. To be fair, Spring's Call is more useful as an accessory or a complementary Jade for Divine Thunder, as in like Thunder Pull, Thunder Counter setup. The reason is because that way for the next 10 seconds, every single bolt that you launch from Divine Thunder will have that extra attack boost. However, it can also be used just as a mainstay for ice builds as well, but it really is better more so on Divine Thunder setups. So we're almost done with this guy. We can just pretty much, we're taking him out with just normal attacks now, and that's pretty much it. He was the 9th boss. So that's kind of how to sit there and run Enigma solo and get through all 9 bosses bit by bit. And this has been War on Gaming. Thank y'all so much for watching. Catch y'all in the next one. Peace.